Okay, let's start. First of all, could you please tell us about yourself and how Egypt called you to support these divine sacred places?
Yeah. How did I first get involved with this? It goes back to around 2006, when just by chance I ended up meeting John Anthony West, who was a pioneer in the research that ended up opening up all these mysteries of Egypt and showing us a lot of points of evidence that indicated the Sphinx in particular was much older than everyone thought. Um, sorry, let me silence my phone. Forgot to do that. Yeah, and I met John in 2006, and I ended up just kind of becoming very close with him, spending a lot of time talking about some of these mysteries, and he gave me a lot of these suggestions of other authors and researchers who had opened up meaningful avenues of investigation that all kind of were building upon a foundation he had built uh, that gave us enough reason to question the timeline of the origin of civilizations as we know it, largely due to the Sphinx, but also kind of opening up this conversation about exactly how sophisticated the knowledge of the ancients was and proving that they knew so much about the stars, about the soul, and all of this really amazing information was kind of encrypted into so many aspects of the culture and this esoteric language of the hieroglyphs and the statues and temples. He started kind of showing me that there was something there in ancient Egypt that actually uh, encoded this entire science that was something that could be resurrected in today's world and really give us quite a boost as humanity. It could help us understand how to heal, how to use energy, how to do these things that I saw as being so important that it really grabbed me and pulled me in. So over 20 years, I've been really obsessed with this idea of Egypt and what could be learned from it. And it just, I don't know, that's what gave me the passion for it. And then continuously, I started working with more and more of these experts who are world-class, brilliant researchers, Dr. Robert Schoch, Manu Safezadeh, some of these other people who have added on to what John had originally started to show the world. So it's grown and grown. I've worked with William Brown a lot. He's a friend who's done all these done all these GPR scans and investigations of different parts of the plateau. We've looked deeper and deeper into the Edgar Cayce material and what he said about this Hall of Records at the Sphinx. So we've been closing in on more and more of the mysteries at Giza specifically, but also Hawara, a site about 90 kilometers south of Giza that I've been very, very interested in since the beginning as well, and which is finally getting excavated today. That is so exciting. So yeah, it's been a long kind of journey towards this point where everything's coalescing into a lot of interest. Thanks to the Coffer Project, who I've also been working with, the Italian team, Filippo Biondi and Corrado Malanga. Um, and yeah, I've just recently got back from Italy where they released all their information about the Second Sphinx they've discovered with the SAR Doppler tomography at Giza. And so yeah, I've kind of built myself into the community as a bridge between a lot of the different people that are finding different aspects of the plateau and other mysteries within Egypt. And I found myself in the middle of a lot of it. And it's very exciting to see it all kind of coming together these days.
Actually, please correct me if I'm wrong. Last year, it all just got bigger with last year shaft finding, right? It was
Yeah,
last year. Yeah.
yeah, that the Copper Project released all their information. Yeah, I had been working with William Brown a couple of years before that, and I had seen their paper that came out in 2022, which was before it was just about the internal structures of the Great Pyramid and not about what was underneath all the pyramids. but I had reached out to Corrado and Filippo at that point, and it took me a little while. But then maybe about 2 years ago, I finally connected with them and started talking. And Corrado basically told me just get ready for March 15th, 2025, last year, when they finally released all this information about what was actually underneath the pyramids and these mega structures, they called them, which, I had originally told them, all right, that sounds great. And let me know if I can help get this message out because there's this blacklisting going on within the global media. They just didn't cover this paper from 2022 even, where they were showing 20 new discovered detected chambers within the Great Pyramid that had never been known before, and basically showed them in detail what they looked like. So this was one of the greatest discoveries ever to come out of the Giza Plateau, and I'm seeing the international media just ignoring it. So, because I reached out to them and said, I just want to help get this news out and let it be reported so people can see what you're doing, they actually let me release those images before anyone else on March 15th last year, which I didn't really quite realize was going to be. I thought there was everyone from the conference, their original press conference was going to be releasing that, but it turned out to just be me. So, I ended up getting associated with them and with helping them. So I got a lot of interviews and stuff last year, ended up covering a lot of that project. And the Second Sphinx conference, or the final chapter of their material from Giza, was just presented at this conference in Italy I was at in Bologna a couple weeks ago. And this was basically them wrapping up all the Giza material for now. And then Filippo's going to start working on scanning Hawara at this point. So it's moving along.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit Second Sphinx. If I'm not wrong, it was written in Dream Stele, right? Tutmos
Mhm.
Fort. So,
Yeah.
but at first, the historians, the archaeologists, they said that it's just metaphor, it's not real. But
Yeah.
now it
Mhm.
can be real, right?
Yeah, there have been several people suggesting the possibility of a second Sphinx, and largely due to the Dream Stele having this image of two Sphinxes back to back, each with these chambers underneath them. Though some, such as Robert Bauval, for instance, has suggested this second Sphinx could just be Leo, the celestial counterpart to the physical statue on the ground, could be metaphorical in some sense. There have been a few locations at Giza where there's been suggestions of a second Sphinx, going back to one of the earliest in the early Arab texts. We're describing this one Sphinx across the Nile facing the one we know. There have been suggestions of a Sphinx like just north of the Sphinx we know, on this mound that's kind of right there, that I've spent a lot of time investigating with William Brown, that location. Then there was another that's kind of over to the southwest of the Sphinx in the Southern Cemetery, which was proposed by Dr. Reda Abdel Halim. Um, and that one's just like a very weathered structure on the plateau that people think that he thinks could have been a weathered Sphinx from before. But this new one is in the northwest corner and completely separate from all of that. So this new one was first proposed by Damiano Parras, who I got to meet at the conference. He had shared his book with me, The Dawn of a New Sphinx, maybe a month before this all came out, when Filippo first announced it with Matt Bell, and at the same time with myself and George Howard. We did an interview sharing some of the initial stuff about that. Um, Sorry, one second. I'm just gonna close this window so it doesn't make more notification sounds. Um, so yeah, Damiano proposed this potential of a Sphinx being in this location in the Northwest based on some of this astronomical and geometric calculations he used to say, well, this could be something important here. And there was this mound of sand at that location that could have been kind of dumped on top of this. And Filippo did some initial scans. He saw these large shafts going down underneath that mound, and then he decided to do some more high resolution scans. and look at the face more, the body, the legs, and the head especially. And after doing many more scans on that location, he decided to say he was 100% sure this was a second Sphinx. So these scans we were all kind of waiting for until the conference. And when he put them out at the conference in Bologna, we just got an English version of that entire 3.5 hour conversation, presentation. And he shared all these images that showed basically that he was seeing this, the head, the body, the paws, everything, that it was underneath the mound, which is important to say, not within the mound, but underneath it, because we do know that the mound of sand is a spoil heap of excavated materials they pulled out of the shafts in the Western Cemetery, mostly Herman Junker and George Reisner in the 19 teens and 1920s. A lot of that was cleared out and dumped there. But I was the first person to actually share this image that was published in 1929 by Herman Junker that shows that the mound was not there at the time the photo was taken, but the photo is probably actually from more like 1910 or that time period because it shows nothing there. But a lot of other people kind of took this photo, which Manu Saves Today had given me. He was the one who tipped me off to that image. And yeah, a lot of other people shared it saying, okay, this is proof that Filippo's wrong. There's no Sphinx there, but that can all get thrown in the trash because Filippo is saying it's underneath the mound, not inside it. And he's got all these scans that are at this point showing us not only that it's the basic shape of a Sphinx, but that the proportions are very exactly similar to the one we know. The head is smaller proportionally to the body. So he also saw even details that indicated this Nemes headdress of the fourth dynasty, similar to the one we know. And so there's a high likelihood that the second Sphinx was also potentially recarved from an earlier structure that might have been a lion or a animal head of some type. But it appears now that it is a dynastic head with that headdress and actually the Urius cobra on the forehead, which is not intact on the Sphinx we have today. There used to be one, which was in the Cairo Museum. I think it's maybe been moved now to Gem, but the beard and the cobra of the original Sphinx are there. So yeah, it's very exciting to see these new scans coming out and be able to get into it with I actually shared some of the original slides from that presentation as well on my archaeologicalrescue.org/second sphinx. There's all the resources there I put together in one place for people who want to look into it.
If I'm not wrong, Robert Schoch said that the age of the Sphinx that we already know is much more older than it's written in the history
Uh,
books. So we can say it is the same age of the second Sphinx also.
as far as we can see so far, it would appear to be. Yeah. And yeah, John Anthony West had brought Schoch to the Sphinx to investigate that. And then, they brought in Dr. Thomas Dobecki as a seismologist to investigate what was underneath the ground, look at some of the weathering patterns of how water moves under the Sphinx. And yeah, Schoch initially said this has got to push it back a few thousand years before the first dynasty. But later ended up, amending his opinion to push it back even further than that towards this era of, 12,000 years ago or more, which is kind of backed up by this idea of like astrological dating using when the Sphinx would have been looking at the heliacal rising of Leo in the sky, which means the point at which Leo rises with the sun, which occurs only once every 26,000 years, once a precessional cycle, basically. So that might seem like a reach to some people who don't understand how important the astrology was to the Egyptians. But if you read John West's book, The Case for Astrology, this is a really important one where he really outlines how important this was to them and that these signs of the zodiac were consistent going back to ancient Sumer and to beyond the dawn of written language, we still have these same symbols associated with these signs of the zodiac. So it's older than language itself. You know, Leo, Taurus, these different animals and qualities being associated with those signs of the zodiac. So if you really wrap your head around how this works, like they would change the statuary of the country and all the symbolism depending on the ruling aspect of the sun. When the sun moves from Taurus to Aries, for instance, you're going to switch from bull statues to rams. And this is what happened in the time of Egypt. They switched over, like the sun is ruling through a new filter of energy that has this quality associated with the next sign. So if you understand that, you realize they would never have built a lion statue in any age besides the age of Leo. And that's just kind of the astrological dating helps go along with supporting the idea that it was built in an age of Leo, with which John West even said could have been the previous one, which would not just be like 10,500 BC, but going back more like 36,000 BC in that range. But Schoch's geological evidence did help back him up in saying that there's no way it was built originally in dynastic times, at least. But with
Mhm.
some of Manu Safzadeh's additional research into this in his book Under the Sphinx here, he brought forward a lot more evidence from Egyptian hieroglyphs and from before Khafre's time, symbolism showing that there was this lion statue at Giza. Um, a lot of evidence that really lays it out that it was a lioness before, a female lion named Mehit, who was this goddess associated with the flood, for one thing, with permanence and infinity and being eternal, basically, and was a guardian of this sacred or royal archive that was straight up mentioned by the Egyptians themselves, not just Edgar Cayce, not just the psychic predictions, but he really lays out the case that the Sphinx was there before Khafre's time, the attributed builder of it, and that it was likely recarved into a human head, probably during his reign, but the original statue was much older.
So you think we will be lucky enough to see the archive of these ancient times under the Sphinx will be open one day?
I think so. And
Really?
I just put out a another video. It's called The Pyramid of Records on my channel on YouTube. This video about the Pyramid of Records is based on one of the suggestions from Edgar Cayce. He talked about the actual records being in a pyramid that was buried, that would automatically kind of get covered over with sand and hidden. He mentioned the tomb of records or halls of records in other readings, but there were a few where he specifically said a pyramid of records. So we just released some information from the Edgar Cayce Foundation archives that show some of these conceptual images of how this pyramid might be connected underground from the tunnels under the right shoulder of the Sphinx. And I was going to mention quick also that one of the main things when Schoch really challenged the dating on the Sphinx was all these academic archaeologists, they couldn't handle it. It was way too dramatic of a claim to make for them. And they basically came back with this question of, well, if this Sphinx was from 12,000 years ago, then where's the other evidence of advanced civilization at that time period? And this is what connects directly to what you're working on in Turkey, because Göbekli Tepe was the smoking gun that now we could go back to people like Zahi Hawass and say, okay, here's the other evidence. Here is a site with extremely advanced artistic, incredible creativity and skill shown at this site. Um, so that was one of the really amazing supporting pieces of evidence that really backed up this idea that civilization did not start 5,000 years ago, like they tell us. So, it really ends up connecting to these cultures of Turkey and other countries in the Middle East. So more and more things keep popping up that are supporting this idea that, civilization did go back much earlier, and that this period of development of that civilization is basically unseen. We don't understand where, they would have needed tens of thousands of years to understand the full length of the precessional cycle, this slow wobble of the Earth's axis. And so there's no real evidence of where that knowledge came from, how it was developed, but it's encoded into the layout of Giza, into the layout of some of these other sites like Nabta Playa in Egypt, stone circles and things like that. So there's evidence of this very, very advanced knowledge, but we don't really see where it came from or the period of development. But we do know it was there long before this, all the civilizations we know popped up.
It looks like the Giza Plateau we know, it was just an iceberg. Uh,
The tip of the iceberg.
yeah,
Yeah.
now there's so many things to discover. And what is your idea about this plateau? I mean, at first we were saying that, oh, even Tesla got some inspiration from these pyramids and he used it for wireless energy, blah, 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 blah. But what is your opinion about the aim of this plateau?
Um, well, I usually would start answering that question by saying that there is definitely multiple functions and purposes, I believe, for the pyramids. I think they could be used in many different ways. They'd had a lot of different effects. Spiritually, religiously, they were certainly part of these initiations. They were described as kind of like ascension machines. They would help the soul of the king to ascend to the stars, things like that. But then you also have functional kind of machinery, mechanical functions described by Chris Dunn, and others who have looked into that, whether it's electromagnetic energy or just kind of earth energies that end up harnessing or amplifying the energy that comes out of the ground naturally at that place, and it can stimulate basically fertility in the land and health and things like that. Um, some of the structures that the Coffer Project have shown, these giant columns with coils, hollow wells, they're describing them as, they basically fit similarly into this basic blueprints of, yeah, like you say, Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. A lot of these had this groundwork going down, tapping into aquifers below, and it looks very much like what we see at the pyramids. I believe Tesla had this dream of, creating a wirelessly distributed network throughout the whole planet. I think at a certain point he realized that this is what the pyramids already were, and they could be fixed and repaired and turned back on in a sense because they're still harnessing and emitting energy of various types, even creating these plasma bubbles like the Chinese university had recently did a paper on. Um, it also has effects on the weather patterns, on the ozone, helping things underneath the ground to remain like there were so many different effects that this amazing Ukrainian defense engineer ended up discovering with his experiments on pyramids, Dr. Alexander Golod. So much of what he learned about them was world changing. I kind of did a much bigger presentation on a lot of that called the Prosperity Machine, another film on my channel, where I looked into a lot of the effects that pyramids have, and storing water in them, for instance, would uh, it, pyramid water, like that's charged by a pyramid, can actually heal all kinds of things. There's a lot of experiments like that, or with fertility of crops and purifying water that's nearby, things like that. So I think it's very far reaching, and it's uh it's possible that they have many different applications that could be used at different time periods in history, or depending on the awareness of the culture in place. Um, I think it can be used in many different ways. But yeah, it certainly seemed to collect and harness energy from the Earth itself. And that's why all these pyramids around the planet are placed on these nodes that are intersections of the ley lines. And it's kind of, they're almost like acupuncture points on the body. The Earth has this same type of meridians of energy running through it. And when you place these pyramids or temples on those locations, it's like sticking acupuncture points in the body where it targets these pressure points that are stimulating the proper flow of energy through the surface of the planet. And this leads to a global harmonious kind of ecosystem regeneration, something like that.
So, for the near future, what should we expect about this plateau?
Well, I think there are there are some plans to propose different projects at Giza. Personally, I feel I'm working on a number of different presentations about more information at Giza specifically. I think it should be, I think for starters at least, what we should focus on is trying to clear the sand out of a lot of these shafts that are blocked only by sand. It's not even excavation really. It's just clearing sand. It's not really digging or breaking through rock. Um, just removing sand. There's at least a dozen places on the plateau that I want to highlight that are absolutely very important and prominent locations on the plateau that could very likely lead down to this deeper stuff, which of course has always been the plan. You can't just say based on even if it's GPR or SAR, electrical resistivity, magnetometry, different types of remote sensing underground. The scanning is always just the initial phase of what leads to showing that there's enough there so we can excavate. Filippo and everyone else I know who's been working on that remote sensing side of things, we all know that that's the preliminary step that leads to a physical in-person investigation, excavation, and exploration. That's what everyone on Earth is now asking for. Everyone wants to see this. Everyone wants to know, are these massive structures that we've been shown real? So there are a number of shafts, in particular between the Sphinx and the Middle Pyramid,
Mhm.
especially. And I've been focusing on that area a lot because you have what's called Campbell's tomb directly behind the Sphinx is a very large shaft going straight down. That would be one of the places to start, I think. And then the ones to the west of that along the Sphinx Causeway. Um, I believe I've been sharing a lot of evidence that there is a tunnel directly from the Sphinx to the Copper Pyramid along the Sphinx Causeway, and you have the Osiris shaft in the middle there and several other shafts along the way that, from what we do know about these shafts, a lot of them had been cleared, for example, by Salim Hassan in the 1920s and 30s. And what we do know about them, there are certainly a lot of tombs scattered throughout, especially in what they call the three cemeteries, southern, eastern, and western. But it's clear that a lot of these could be light and air shafts for the tunnel system below. And a lot of them will split off into three more, and then each one of those will split off into three more. And you'll end up with this whole labyrinth of tunnels throughout the entire plateau. And any one of these shafts could connect directly into that greater system. So we've got hundreds of these shafts we could simply clear sand out of and potentially gain entrance into this lower system, into this larger system, which I believe connects to the Sphinx and to all three pyramids, in fact, as well as over to these record halls, which might be a little further east of the Sphinx. So we have all of these potential entrances into the larger system that could be accessed just by removing sand. That's the obvious place to start. And then there are many other things we could move up to once we get more interest and funding and have all the right things to bring to the ministry, do it right, the right equipment and people. And yeah, I think once we start with some removing sand from some of these shafts, it can expand to more and more things. Eventually, the second Sphinx, maybe we could excavate, but that's a ton of sand on top of it. It would be a big job, but eventually, there's so many things we could move on to from some of these initial shafts. But I think it would end up leading to information that would be so exciting for the whole world. It would just dramatically boost the tourism in the country. Everyone in Egypt benefits when the tourism boosts. So there's so many things that it's just a no-brainer. There's no reason not to do it, and everything about it would be incredible and exciting, and something very beautiful for the whole planet to be united in wonder about what we're going to see. It's just an amazing, one of the most important things I could possibly imagine working on. Yeah, it's endless opportunities there, basically.
Maybe it's like it's like a divine timing, and through these new findings, I don't know the energy, the cosmos. I don't know its name, but it's like a wake up call for us because nowadays, what's going on Earth? It's like crazy, all this darkness. But
Yeah.
here we have something huge, we have something ancient, we have something wise, and maybe it's like a wake up, wake up.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is that time period. It's that time when, ever since the dawn of the internet, it's been basically inevitable. People are going to start putting the pieces together. They're going to start seeing this. But the reason it's so important to me is because I see that it's something that could really unite humanity in a way that has never been done before. I think it has to do with our cultural identity, our identity as a species on this planet, all of humanity. It's not just Egypt, it's all of us. It's a inheritance, a legacy of information that could give us something we've never had before, which is a collective level of self-awareness, where we came from as a culture, as a species. It's something that can tell us who we truly are and give us a sense of self-awareness that we've never had before, basically, because, we've been given this story over and over where all of these monuments are attributed to the latest possible age the archaeologists can put them at, and, they're kind of just diminished by the picture of them that we're being given. There's so much more to it. And I think, I don't know, it will help us find our place in the cosmos, in the universe. It's larger than just Earth, I believe. It's this cosmic knowledge of the stars. They had so much information. And this was apparently a lot of what these records are about, is about astronomy and connections to other places. They're talking about stargates at every single temple. They're talking about these types of portals and things. And you just can't leave that part out of the conversation. I'm not saying, oh, aliens built the pyramids or anything like that, but it's clear there were connections off planet in certain ways. There's things could be, I don't know, you see all these images of boats among the stars, like star ships, like some of these some of this symbolism isn't so esoteric. Sometimes it's right in front of your face, and these archaeologists have found ways to ignore all this stuff. But you also have, UFO and ET disclosure happening on an unprecedented level at this point in terms of the modern world. And beyond just, ancient aliens on the History Channel, you have to kind of open your mind up about how these monuments were connected beyond just the Earth in a serious way and look at some of the evidence that's showing some of that. Because, I mean, if humanity can actually become mature enough to look at this thing objectively and say there's something much bigger than what we've been told, then it can lead to actual progress into a better future, finding our place in the universe. And kind of humanity needs some of these things that can be common elements that we all share, and could move us forward in ways. I think discovering where we came from is the key to making this our future much brighter, basically.
I hope so. So those were the questions for my interview, but if you would like to add something, please go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I could go on forever about various aspects of this. There's so much going on that seems to be all kind of tied together in ways, even if it doesn't seem that way, like working on things in Mexico and Guatemala as well, where I believe similar records can be found to what's in Egypt. But I've got to say how much it connects to what you're doing in Turkey and how much I really appreciate the work you've been doing there because you're kind of similar to me in Egypt, acting as a bridge between, I really love that you're connected with both the academic archaeologists there as well as some of the alternative authors and researchers. And we need to have more people like you who are bridges between those two fields because, I've called it the war for archaeology, and it's not something I want to admit is real, but it is. It is a war. It's a war between this two conflicting sides, and it shouldn't be. It should be, any idea that has merit that is worthy of further investigation, the door should not be closed to these things. But we have a culture of gatekeeping within the archaeological community. Like, if you're not peer reviewed, you don't count at all. But if you're not peer reviewed, you can't get peer reviewed. But, we have this I don't know, a real divide between these two viewpoints where they should all be considered together. You should be able to discuss the ideas of Robert Schoch and John Anthony West within your university, with your professors, with your students. And it shouldn't be a war, but it has been. I don't want to win the war for the alternative side. I want to end the war. I don't want there to be a war. So, I think it's connected very closely to everything you're working on in Turkey, and I really appreciate you helping to basically set the table for this discussion because it needs to involve a lot of people bringing the puzzle pieces they have together, and you need to have a table to put all those pieces on. So, yeah, I see it. I see Turkey being a major, major player in helping people to awaken to this greater idea that there were cultures, 10 or tens of thousands of years ago, that civilization did not begin 5,000 years ago, as we're told. And there are records and languages, symbolism that go back so much further and that tell us things that are so much more important than anything else we're talking about in the world today. Things that tie to our roots as a species on this planet, basically, that can teach us about ourselves. So I think that's the key to what the world needs right now, and that's why it is coming up and why more and more people are getting awakened to it. So, yeah, I'm happy to talk with you about this. Appreciate your work so much. And yeah, it's going to be developing this year beyond what we've seen in the past. There's so much going on. We already know there's also projects to investigate the large void in the Great Pyramid that should happen by the end of this year that are being headed up by Sean Whitehead. That's another very exciting aspect of it. So I think in 2026, we're going to see some amazing stuff coming up from Egypt as the year progresses. Very
And
exciting.
are you planning to arrange another conference?
I have a tour coming up
Uh-huh.
for January into February of next year, and I'm going to be with Manu Safzadeh, my favorite researcher in Egypt. He's just absolutely fantastic. That's why I reference him in almost every one of my videos because he's really brilliant and he's the basically top choice I had. If I could go to Egypt with anyone, it would be him. So I'm really excited. He's never ever offered a tour before. This is your first chance to see Egypt with Dr. Manu Safzadeh and Mohammed Ibrahim, who is a mutual friend of ours. You know Mohammed. Mohammed, Guide of Egypt and Saba Tours. This is the greatest tour company in Egypt. He's got amazing resources, connections. He really does an amazing job. He's got his own buses. We did this last year with Chris Dunn and um, had some also remote presentations. This year, we're going to have remote presentations on the tour from Chris Dunn, Filippo Biondi, and Gary Osborne. Again, three of my favorite, great friends, great researchers. And there's also going to be an add-on for this tour. I have to say, we'll be with Louis Decordier, my friend who set up the original excavation, the original GPR scans at Hawara that first discovered all those chambers there and proved the labyrinth was still there back in 2008, the Mataha expedition. And Louis is now coordinating the new project at Hawara, where they are already excavating and have already uncovered some of these pieces of the walls, megalithic structures. So you'll be able to join us at Hawara with Louis Decordier on the add-on tour that's like 4 days at the end, from February 1st through 4th. So we'll be going to Amarna and Fayum, the Fayum Oasis. And Amarna is the Minya district where Akhenaten's kingdom was, which is another area that not many people go to in Egypt, especially on tours, but it has immense cultural significance in so many ways. So if you're interested in joining that tour, check out sabatours.com, or I have a page up about the tour, archaeologicalrescue.org/Egypt tour as one word. Um, you can get more information about that, but it's going to be a phenomenal tour. Lots of surprises too, bonuses, lots of private entrances. We're doing the Sphinx Temple, which not many people go to, but this has incredible evidence of the same geological weathering that we see on the Sphinx itself. I was only in the Sphinx Temple once myself with Dr. Robert Schoch back in 2019 because very few tours ever put that on. The private entrance you have to pay for. Most people just do the Sphinx Courtyard and the Great Pyramid. But the Sphinx Temple, you need a private entrance permission as well. So that's an exciting draw. We're going to go in the Osiris shaft as well for the first people at least to sign up because that may get filled up. It's hard to bring in more than like maybe 15 people there at a time, but that'll be an option at least for whoever signs up. So it's going to be a great one.
That sounds like a miracle for me, and I want to be there with you.
I hope you could come.
I hope so. Thank you for this
Uh,
interview. Now I'm ending the record.
okay, thank you.